And the reason I came here today is that I hope I can persuade all of you about the point I'm going to make later on, and that is the point about academic energy. Okay? Because if we don't have that, then I'm wasting my time. Okay? But so I'm looking to you to be different. I'm looking to you to be serious about this culture. Because it's so easy to give up. It's so easy to fall and become part of a culture. A culture in which everybody is a kunamata. More is not enough, they say nothing else. Why, you know? So the first thing I want to do is for energy, because we don't have that, you're wasting your time on masters. Most students who enroll for masters in South Africa drop out. Did you know that? More than half. Because there isn't really an energy, a commitment. Everybody's like a customs agent, waiting for Jesus to return, etc. Okay. If you want to become a really, really good scholar, which all of you can become if you see it, it starts off with a good question. And if your question is lousy, everything else will be lousy as well. Okay? So let's think about a good question in general. Can anybody sort of talk to me about something that puzzles you? Something that doesn't make sense to you? Something that, and it doesn't have to be a scholarly question. You know, it could be an everyday question. Is there anybody that wants to start off? Something that you just don't get. Something that conflicts with your own sense of what must be true or not. You know, something that churns away at your intellect and say, I wonder why, document.
We have been investing, by we I mean the South African government has been investing a lot of money in higher education. And that is not translating into more graduates and even high quality graduates. And
right.
That has puzzled.
So that's a good question. It's a puzzle. Why do we put so much money into education, but so little outwards? By the way, the same question is often asked in relation to schools. We spend more money as a percentage of GDP, but also as a slice of the national budget. We spend more money on education than any other country except Botswana, and yet we get the worst results when compared to places like Lesotho, Mozambique, Ghana, Nigeria. We're always competing at the bottom with countries you don't even know. Why? Why put so much money in and get so little products out? That's a reasonable question. It's a puzzle. Any other, and by the way, if you don't engage in your life in posing questions all the time as a habit, if it's not an habitual disposition, it's very difficult to suddenly pose good questions in your research. You know what I'm saying? Do you know how South Africans put down kids who ask questions? You see, when kids come out of the womb, they ask questions all the time. Right? Why is the sky blue? Why is this? And a typical South African mother or teacher or father is, hey, just stay quiet. We don't encourage questions. And if you don't develop the habit of asking questions in everyday life, you will never ask good questions in scholarship. I was giving a lecture to about 300 girls. Granted, it was at a very, very affluent private school where Steve Jobs' daughter was in the school. And a grade 10 kid puts up a hand. This is 3 years ago. Professor, what are you? Listen to the question. Grade 10. Will this happen in your hand? Professor, could you please tell me your views on the suburbanization of poverty? I said, the suburbanization of poverty? What the hell? She's grade 10. She's supposed to be asking me questions about ice cream and, you know. But because she's in a culture in which questioning is valued. How many of you have children? How many of you plan to have children? The rest of you are rather quiet. Or you are none or something. Make sure you teach your children to ask questions all the time because it's good for their mental health. Anybody else have a question? Thank you, Dr. Mensah, for starting us off. Anybody else have a life question that you find to be a puzzle? Yes, sir.
Why so much money is poured into teacher staff development, but at the end of the day, we continue to have poor quality teachers and poor results in schools?
Why so much investment? It's the same kind of question. Why so much investment in teacher development, but so little performance in terms of teacher productivity? Good questions. But in general, anybody have a life question?
Okay.
Let me give you an example of a life question because I see you guys are all focused on professions. You know, why is it that South Africans pride themselves on being able to appoint a president who didn't finish primary school? Why is that a point of pride? You talk to the average comrade in the township, you know, hey, why must I go to school? Look at number one. I can get there, shortcuts, gators. Why is it not? You will never find a Tanzanian saying, oh, Julius Nyerere, you know, we love him because he didn't finish school. Oh, they're proud. This was Mwalimu, the teacher. They're proud. The Zambians, you know, they're educated people. Oh, not in Mzansi. The lower you are, the higher you go. Why do we pride ourselves on people like Julius Nyerere or Feldman? Why do we get such a kick out of ignorance? And ask yourself, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. Why do we put so much money, so much politics, so much development into soccer, and we've got the worst soccer team? Somebody wrote to me in California and said, hey, Prof, we got a problem. Bafana is in a group of death. I said, listen, you could put Bafana against Panaskuchi's primary school, they would still be in a group of death because these guys can't play soccer. Group of death. Who comes up with these terms, group of death? Any other questions? Give me a question. Come on, you guys have to slow to me. Yes, ma'am.
Do you think it's...
No, I want a question.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Is it wiser to get a skill or to acquire knowledge?
What's the puzzle in that?
No, I want to find out.
Now, come back to those general. I'm wanting you to ask pose a question as if it's a research question. You know? I think that puzzles you in everyday life. Let me tell you something that puzzles me.
I think that puzzles me is shoddy language on social media making. Because South Africa reflects the right, general academic right. We write dissertation like we write a message on Facebook. The shoddy language gets me stuck.
Now, I know you're upset, but what's the question?
No, it's quite puzzling.
Yeah. Why do people act like that on social media in such a demeaning way?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, partly because they're anonymous. Yeah. But good question. Yes, please.
Okay. My question is, why is it that people who probably benefit more from a government that isn't corrupt? So let's say government is giving grants to certain people in South Africa that actually need those grants. How is it that those people that need the money are actually fine with constantly voting in the same political party that's actually extremely corrupt?
Very good question. Why is it even when people, like right now in why is it that people don't get services? They vote for the same people with the next election. It doesn't make sense, right? Why stay in a marriage where a guy is violent to you all the time? That's a question that are asked across the world. Why do women stay? There's interesting theories about that. Okay. So,
why are we so poor in South Africa?
why are we so
poor?
poor? Okay.
Why do we have, why we are one of the richest countries in terms of
I'm glad you added the second part, because the other one is then just speculation why we're so poor. At least why we're so poor when we are clearly not a basket case economy like so many others in the world. That's culture. You see what I mean by asking questions that are deep. If the question is wrong, not wrong, but lousy, everything else, the research design, the kinds of theoretical frame, everything will be lopsided because you started off with the question. How effective is technology in distance teaching of science and mathematics? That's a good question. Now again, I know from the literature that that question has been posed before, and so if I was your supervisor, I would press you to refine the question a little bit so that you have a unique angle, not just in terms of distance education, but other dimensions as well. But in broad terms, as in the take-up question, that's good. Okay, so you get the idea. Ask a good question, but you can only judge the question as good if you know what the literature says about the question. Because other research, remember, none of the questions you pose is entirely original. Somebody would have looked at thick and sheet before, or at distance end, and technology delivery before, trust me. But that's where the literature review comes in later on. Okay, you got the idea. Ask a good question and you're on your way. Number 2, as I mentioned earlier in relation to energy levels, you can only finish a master's or PhD or a good book if you are obsessed. May I ask you a question, man? Are you obsessed with this work that you're doing? Are you prepared to give up your husband or wife for that? Talk to me. But why should I be? Yeah, because it's like this world women, you go to the world peace, but bloody skeletons. Not that we mean others. Okay. The point I'm trying to make, guys, and you must listen to me very carefully. I have trained thousands of masters, honors, doctoral students. Everybody talks like him. No, Prof, I'm telling you now. I am so determined. Then along comes a handsome dude. Oh, Prof, you just swept me off my feet. Swipe. Not a guy, it's so easy to be distracted. And I'm telling you now, you're not going to finish it. You get promotion at work. You must work long hours. You get married. You get pregnant. You get a new job. You move town. You go live in a different part of the country or the world. All of these things are very important distractors that tend to happen at this stage in your life. It doesn't happen when you're 18. It will happen when you're 25. You know what I mean? And then the question is, how determined are you? So the way I finish this book is I get up every morning at 2 o'clock. No matter how tired I am, I get up at 2 o'clock. I start writing until 10, 11 in the morning. Then I go to campus and I work in the archives till 6 at night. Then I take dinner with friends or something for an hour and they get upset, but I do it at 6 to 7 and I go back to my apartment. Then I write till about 11, I sleep till 2 and I'm up again writing. If you don't have that kind of obsession, you will not get it done endlessly. So my point simply is, guys, if you're not determined, if you're not obsessed, if you're not prepared to get up at 3 and start writing, I'm not saying you must get up at 3, I'm just saying there must be a way of managing your life and your time. Otherwise it will not. Okay, you need to be obsessed. And the scholars that make it are the ones who are devoted to this work. Number 3, it requires a sense of innovation in theory and method. In other words, don't simply do what everybody else did. Try and do things differently. So almost everybody does questionnaires and interviews and other traditional measurement kinds of things. That's a normal master's or a normal PhD. And if I read it, I will tell you did well, but I wouldn't say you were exceptional because you're like everybody else. How about doing things completely differently? Let me give you an example. For this book on the politics of intimacy, I decided to do it via photographs. So we have developed more than 1,000 photographs on the university on intimacy. That is, on relationships between black and white students. Okay? And so the book is about looking at the problem of intermediacy, not through question as intellect, but through the facility of a photograph. Okay, what can a photograph tell me that I don't get in a standardized observation protocol or something like that? Okay? Try to be real, also in theory. Always write with publication in mind. So even with a master's, but especially a PhD, say to yourself, when I'm done with this, or even before I'm done with this, I want to start publishing out of it. And in the sciences, it's very easy because you guys often work with other collaborators. You know, science people only publish 4 or 5 at a time. So it's easier compared to humanities students. But always say, I might want to turn this into a book, if it's a humanities thing especially, or I might want to get 2 or 3 articles out of it, do journals if it's a science. It comes with really good writing skills. Now most of you can't write well, okay? And how do you learn to write? Number 1, you learn to write by writing all the time. I'm a piano player. Did you know I'm a famous jazz pianist? Nobody else knows it, but so I play the piano. If a week goes by and I haven't played the piano, I can feel the rustiness. I'm no longer fluent. Okay? Because playing the piano, like writing, is a habit. You've got to keep doing it to be good. Now, this university is one of the best places in which you can learn to write. It's part of the Center for Teaching and Learning. And as you go in there, you can book a specialist who can teach you to write. You know that? Priscilla, you want to talk about that?
No, I wanted to talk about something else.
Okay.
I wanted to ask what role journaling has when it comes to writing.
Journaling?
Yes.
Say more?
I don't mean the Dear Diary stuff, but keeping a journal. Can that assist with writing and enhancing the way you work with words?
You could do that. I generally feel simply putting your fingers on a keyboard is the best way to do it. Okay? And if you just do a page a day, it becomes a habit. Ernest Hemingway, the famous writer, wrote a page every day of his life. Just the habit of writing. Okay? And you get fluent and better. Then, when you become a research student for a master's or PhD, also do other things. Attend conferences in tick fever or whatever. Go and become friends with people who are professors, who are famous researchers in tick disease, tick-borne sheep. Go and read books and journals, not the ones that your professor prescribe, but your own stuff. Give it to me. Read this one. Do you know I sent back 10 boxes of books to Bloemfontein? The first one arrived today. Because when I was there, I became so obsessed with my topic, I bought every book I could find on the topic. Okay? Because it was interesting. Now it cost me money, but most of it I bought secondhand on Amazon.com. My point simply is, don't just read narrowly, read around, read broadly, so that you become the expert in that area of research. But it means exposing yourself. And even though you're doing research now on the take-up of ticks in sheep, ask yourself, what will my postdoc look like? If I'm doing a doctorate, what the postdoc? If I'm doing a master's, what would I want to do with PhD? In other words, look towards the future. In other words, what's my next big research project about, on the one hand, and what will my career be about? Okay, if I'm going to take this further, etc., etc.